Kakadosh, good morning. We wanted to share a beautiful idea on this week's Parashat, Vayakhel Pekude, which speaks about the importance of the Holy Day of Shabbat. We speak about Shabbat in this week's Parashat. The Parashat says, Sheshet Yamim Te'aseh Melacha. For 6 days you shall do work. Uvayom HaShevi'i, and on the 7th day, Yeh Lachem Kodesh. It shall be for you holiness. So the purpose of the Shabbat in our perspective, in the way that we Jews look at a Shabbat, is in something which is the highest spiritual level. The entire week, we're always busy. We are working. We're busy doing different things. And all of a sudden, when it comes the day of Shabbat, we completely detach ourselves from everything which is in the physical world, right? We do eat and enjoy and drink on Shabbat, don't get me wrong. But we have to try to separate ourselves from what it is, the work. We put a pause. And then what happens is we connect ourselves with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. The Bet Yosef in Siman Resh Pechet and the Raman Siman Resh Sadi brings it down that people that usually work during the week have to learn even more on Shabbat, which means that the Limud Torah on Shabbat is very important. We know that the Ben Yishchai used to say that learning Torah on Shabbat is 1,000 times more than learning Torah during the week. Meaning when you're talking about proportion, I think it was an Onachaim HaKadosh that said that the Chokhmah that you get on Shabbat is a wisdom that you don't get during the week. It's a special wisdom that if you want to learn something difficult, you do it on Shabbat. Because the Shabbat is going to give you this strength and this understanding what normally we do not have. The Shach on the Torah comes and he brings a Midrash. The Midrash says that when Bnei Israel came into Eretz Israel, the Torah said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right, 1 second, everyone's going to start working. What's going to be with me? He went and he said, don't worry about it. Don't worry, the Torah. He says, I gave them Shabbatot. And on Shabbat, they're going to be learning Torah. So it comes out that any single time that it's written Shabbat by itself, it says, Sheshet Yamim Ta'aseh Melacha. Sheshet Yamim Ta'aseh Melacha means for 6 days, you have to work. However, though, he comes and he says something incredible. He says, every single time that it's written Shabbat Shabbaton, which means like it's like a sabbatical. It's something that you're making it a true Shabbat. It doesn't say Ta'aseh Melacha, you have to work. It says Te'aseh Melacha, that the work will be done for you. What does that mean, the work will be done for you? Explains the Shach that when a person comes and they are learning Torah on Shabbat and they make the Shabbat the way that it's supposed to be, in the merit of the Shabbat, the work will be done for him throughout the entire week. That's the power of the Shabbat. And there was actually a story with a rabbi that he actually used to work a little bit during the week. And he was making little sculptures. And there was another balabait that he was doing the same thing. So imagine, same profession, same trade, same everything. This rabbi always had beracha in everything. Always, no matter what. He made the beracha. The other guy could work double, triple, nothing. He went to Rabbi, he said, I don't understand. What's going on? What's your secret? There has to be some secret. I don't know, you know, some names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I don't know what you're doing over there. It doesn't make sense. The exact same trade, same profession, same, what's going on? The Rabbi told him very simple. He says, what do you do on Shabbat? He says, Shabbat, I'm crushed. I'm gone. You know what I do on Shabbat? I sleep almost a bagel. I make sure that right after Friday night, right after the meal, I crash. I go to sleep. I don't wake up for the nets. Not even for the regular minyan. I wake up for the 10 o'clock minyan. For the ones of the, the teenagers, the Kiddush club. Yeah, that's where I wake up to. And then I go and I die. Yeah, but I do everything. What do you want? Okay, and what else do you do? No, in the afternoon again. You have to siesta. Shabbat, oneg Shabbat is to sleep. You have to sleep again. And then Sudat Shalishiyah. So he says, I'm going to tell you what I do on Shabbat. And he told him how much he learned on Shabbat. And he said the beracha comes from learning on Shabbat. When you learn on Shabbat, you have beracha for the entire rest of the week. all because of that learning that you're going to have on Shabbat. Okay, so therefore, it comes out that the yesod of the Shabbat is purposely done to stop. The entire week we're running. We're always doing things. So then when do we stop? When do we think? When do we stop to contemplate or to do self-introspect or to think, what are we doing in our lives? So he comes and he says, that was the purpose of the day of the Shabbat. The day of the Shabbat, the purpose of the day of the Shabbat is in order for every single Jew to stop. And that's why it's right before the Melechet HaMishkan, which means if you pay attention, right after the Shabbat, there's the Mishkan. And that's actually how we actually learn, right, the entire concept of the 39 melachot. Where do we learn that you're not allowed to do melacha on Shabbat? You learn from the Mishkan. But now why is it right beside the Mishkan? So he said because the Mishkan was a place of Kiddusha, was a makom of Kiddusha. That's when a person went to the Mishkan or went to the Bet HaMikdash, he went on a very high spiritual level. The Shabbat is the Zman. It's not a place, it's the time. It's a spiritual time. So therefore, right, it's very, very important just for us to realize this importance of the Shabbat because it's going to make a big difference in everything that we have. Now, the exact opposite of the Shabbat, right, is running after the mundane things that we have. And that's why Shibud Mitzrayim, when we were subjugated in Egypt, it was so powerful that we were completely the opposite of what Shabbat was. Within a small amount of time, we became what it was, that we went down to the 49 levels of Tumah, and we were getting under Paro, and Paro does something incredible. We know that by nature, a slave wants to rebel to gain his freedom. What does Paro do? Moshe Rabbeinu comes to Paro, and he tells Paro, listen, you should know, Kohaman Hashem, this is what Hashem says, right? You have to take them out. First of all, Paro comes and he says, who's this Hashem Bichla? Yeah, who's Hashem? What? But all of a sudden he comes and he says, you know what? I see you guys have too much time on your hands. You guys are not working enough. So what are we going to do? Work. I want you to work. So he makes it harder for them. Now the question is, if you would just use logic, use psychology, does that even make sense? At the end of the day, if you already know, right, what's going on, and you know that the nature of a slave is to break free, so now you're going to put more pressure on him. He's going to snap. And he's going to make sure even more that he's going to break free. So what was Paro thinking? What was in his mind? It doesn't even make sense. But rather, again, Kam Chachamim, and they say as follows. They say, really, Be'emet, Paro understood. And he said as follows. I went and I made sure that they were deep into this Tum'ah. If after everything that I've done, still they are seeking and yearning to connect to God, to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to Hashem Yitbarach, that means they're not working hard enough. I have to make them work. Because if I make them work, they forget Hashem. And that was the purpose of Paro. The purpose of Paro is the more that you work, the more that you forget Hashem. And by the way, you should know, that's the concept of the workaholics nowadays. What happens? You come and you put people to work, and you want them to become so much like slaves to their work that 24/7 they're working. Once upon a time, a person would go to the office and he would work at the office. Nowadays, right, it's better for the bosses. Yeah, for the people that own the companies. Yeah, but for the normal working people, you have to be working 24/7. I sent you an email at 9:30 at night. How can you not answer? So now in all the days, you would say, listen, I never even got the email because it was on my work computer and I don't take work at home. Nowadays, you get it at home. Nowadays, at 11:30 at night, you're getting a text, right? What's going on? What? You have to work. Work doesn't stop from 9 to 5. You have to become an eved to your work. You become a slave to your work. And that was in essence Paro. The Mesilat Yesharim comes and he says, at the beginning, the Yetzer Hara comes and he wants to make that we should start working until we don't have time to even think where we're going. What are we doing? Because he knows that all we have to do is just think a little bit about what's going on. And all of a sudden now we would start having remorse. We would start doing teshuvah. We would start changing everything. And that's why Paro, which is the Yetzer Hara, it represents the Yetzer Hara, says, Tichbad ha'avoda ala nashim v'yasu ba v'al yishu b'divrei shaker. He says, make them work hard. Just give them more work and more work and more work. You see them without work, give them double. And just continue going. Why? Because the more that they work, the more that I know they're in my pocket. The more that I know they're not going anywhere. They're going to be here. They're staying with me. And that's what Paro, the Yetzer Hara, was trying to do. Just make them work. And our mission is that now we have to actually break free because of the zechut of the day of the Shabbat. Now we understand also a kal v'chomer. Everyone knows what a kal v'chomer is. A kal v'chomer is basically when if I could come and carry 20 pounds, so obviously I could carry 10 pounds because I learned the kal, the lighter one, from the chamur, from the more stricter one. Meaning if I already could do something more strict, it's much harder, so obviously I could do something much easier. Comes Moshe Rabbeinu when he does a kal v'chomer. And he tells HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I don't understand. He says, if right now Bnei Yisrael did not listen to me, so how is Paro going to listen to me? Right? Bnei Yisrael didn't listen to Moshe Rabbeinu, right? When he said that he was going to redeem the Jewish nation. So if they didn't listen, how's Paro going to listen? Now everyone asks, 1 second, what exactly is the question? 2 psukim beforehand, it already says why he didn't. You know why? Hem lo shamu elai, because mikotzer ruach v'avodah kasha. Kotzer ruach v'avodah kasha means that they were subjugated so hard, they didn't have the strength. They wanted to listen, but it was just impossible for them. They didn't have the strength to listen anymore. They were gone. They were completely, they were, you know what it was? The tedious work that they were being done, they had no strength, no will for nothing. They were destroyed. What do you want from them? Paro is not going to listen, but rather, Kam Chachamim, and they say like this, Moshe Rabbeinu said, Bnei Yisrael, they're Kedoshim. For sure they want to listen. They want to be redeemed. And if so, the Tum'ah is so bad inside of them, it's so instilled inside of them, that because of this impurity, they cannot listen to me to redeem them. So then what do you want? Paro. Paro zavi avot Tum'ah. Paro is the worst of the Tum'ah. He's all the Tum'ah there. He's all there. So what do you want from him? That was what Moshe Rabbeinu was coming and saying. So how do we start Geulat Mitzrayim? So the redemption of Mitzrayim actually started, it says the Tur and Orachaim Siman Taf Lamed, the Shabbat before Pesach. Not this Shabbat, next Shabbat. This Shabbat is a Chodesh. Shabbat Mevarechim. Rosh Chodesh is on Sunday. But the Shabbat afterwards is Shabbat Hagadol. Yeah, I apologize. That's when we're giving the Dirasha of Shabbat Hagadol. Shabbat Hagadol is the Shabbat before Pesach, which is the actual Erev Pesach, right? So that's the Shabbat Hagadol. There's going to be a break, even though the Shabbat Hagadol Dirasha is next Shabbat. Meaning we give the Dirasha because we have to teach them how to do halachot of Pesach. If you're going to be on Shabbat, Erev Pesach, you're not going to be able to teach much, right? Because they already did B'dikat Chametz. They already did the selling of the Chametz. They already checked the Chametz. They already did everything. So now it's already too late. Right? You can't, what are you going to give them? Rules on something that they already did. So therefore, next Shabbat is the Dirasha of the Shabbat Hagadol, and the Shabbat afterwards is Shabbat Hagadol itself. But says the Tur, why is it called Shabbat Hagadol? It says because of the miracle that happened on the 10th of the month. Now remember, right, we are going to ask the famous question, right? Why is it that we don't do it like according to the days of the month? Meaning every single Chag in the Jewish calendar is not according to the days of the week. It's the days of the month. Meaning Shabbat Hagadol, if it happened to fall on the 10th of the month, so every single year, the 10th of the month should have been a type of something Shabbat Hagadol, something of a remembrance of the miracle. But why is it that Shabbat? And it doesn't matter which day the Shabbat is going to come out. This year, Shabbat will be the 14th, right? It's going to be Erev Pesach, right? It could be last year was on the 10th, maybe the 11th, 12th, 9th, 8th. It all depends. So why are we going after the day of the week? Obviously, there's something here. Now, he says Pesach, when they came out of Mitzrayim, was on Thursday. So it comes out that the 10th of Nisan was on Shabbat. So every single person took a sheep to their beds, they tied it, and the Mitzrayim were asking them, what are you guys doing? So they answered, we're going to slaughter your God. We're going to slaughter the Korban Pesach. And their teeth were like, they were going to go crazy. What is this? They're slaughtering our gods. What's going on over here? So all the Nosei Kelim, all of them, they come and they start asking, why is it that normally, right, we come and we do the dates, we do it according to the dates of the month, and all of a sudden here we're doing it according to the days of the week, and it's Shabbat. Why Shabbat? So he comes and he says like this, the Nodab Yehuda, right, Rabbi Cheskel Landau, he comes and he answers. In order to be redeemed from Mitzrayim, we needed a very, very big zechut. And Moshe Rabbeinu was coming and telling them, Mishchu et yidehem, take away your hands from Avodah Zarah, and take the sheep that is represents Avodah Zarah of the Egyptians. And then what are you going to do? You're going to come, right, and you're going to put it right in front of them. Now, the question is, they're putting their lives in danger. They know, they said it a few days ago, well, we're going to slaughter their gods and they're not going to kill us? Think about it. They're subjugated by a foreign nation. They're subjugated by the Mitzrim. The Mitzrim have a god. If we take that god and we start killing them, right, what are the Mitzrim going to do to us? They're killing out our gods? What's going on? And they're going to keep quiet? But rather, the question is, what gave them the omets? What gave them this inner strength? What gave them this incredible power, right, in order to go through this and in order to do this? And this is why they were redeemed from Mitzrayim. So answers Chachamim, it's all because of the Shabbat. Moshe Rabbeinu, as it says in the Midrash, he asked that for one day a week they wouldn't come and they wouldn't work. Because he went to Paro and he told Paro, listen, Paro, very simple. If you're going to come and you're going to work them the entire time, they're going to break, they're going to die. You have to give them a day break. She said, okay, fine. So when should we give them? Give them Saturday. He didn't realize the koach of the Shabbat, so he gave it to them. So Moshe Rabbeinu came and they gave them the Shabbat. And that's why it says over here, the Midrash was written, Shayala Megillot, they had Megillot, they were reading on Shabbat, they were learning on Shabbat. So the day of the Shabbat was the day that they connected with their neshama. And that's what gave them this extra strength to go with their neshama yitira, their extra neshama, in order to become closer to Hashem. And that's what gave them the strength to go against Paro and start slaughtering and doing all these things against the gods of the Mitzrim, of the Egyptians. And they didn't care because they had that inner strength. So there are two different reasons why, right, we find the mitzvah of Shabbat. The first one is in Parashat Yitro, right? There's two different reasons why we have Shabbat. In Parashat Yitro and then Vayakhel. Parashat Yitro, it's written, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadesho. You have to remember the Shabbat. Remembering it, Zachor, lekadesho, to sanctify it. Why? He created the world. Vayanach bayom hashvi, he stopped working on the seventh day. So therefore, that's why we have to stop and we're not going to work on the seventh day. Parashat Vayakhel, it says Shamor, which are the negative commandments. Shamor et Yom HaShabbat lekadesho. V'zacharta, you have to remember that you were a slave in Egypt. So now, one second. The first reason that God created the world in 7 days, or whatever, it was 6 days, and the seventh day He rested, it makes sense. So we're trying to instill emunah, belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu inside of our hearts. And therefore, what happens is we're going to watch the day of the Shabbat. And it makes sense. But the Shabbat for Yetziat Mitzrayim, what do you want to remember now, Yetziat Mitzrayim? What's the connection between Yetziat Mitzrayim, leaving Egypt, and Shabbat? But rather the answer is again the same thing. The Shabbat was given to us to pause, to stop in our tracks, and to say, where are we headed? What are we doing? What are we doing with life? What's going on? What's around us? How? So he says that's explanation, right? The ve'asita kol melachtecha, you're going to work for 6 days and you do all your work. But now, in order not to completely go away from this, he says, right? He says, b'mitzrayim, and therefore, how are you going to fulfill the day of the Shabbat? To learn, and in order to bring closer the Geulah. Which means that our purpose in life is to come and to learn on Shabbat, and to use the Shabbat as a day of spirituality. A day that we're supposed to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A day that we're supposed to actually come and think, 1 second, where are we headed? What are we doing? Self-introspect. Because that's what they did in Mitzrayim. And that's what gave them the strength to come out of Mitzrayim. The Geulah was because of that. So Kam Chachamim, and they say that this in essence is the Ramban. Nachmanides in Shemot, Perekaf, Pasuk Chet, chapter 20, Pasuk 8, he says, V'tam lekadesho, she'ez zichrono bo liyoto kadosh be'enenu, that it has to be holy in our eyes. Just like it says, V'karata la Shabbat oneg, likdosh Hashem mechubad, v'chibatom, v'tam, she'teh shvita be'enenu bavur she'u yom kadosh lipro b'miskeh hamachshavot, that we're basically going to take our minds off of all the different things that we have in our minds. We're going to give an oneg to ourselves. What's the oneg? To learn and to become closer to Hashem. Some people, they think that oneg only implies with their stomachs. Yeah, a good chamin, a dafina, a good drink, that's oneg. No. You have to remember that the oneg depends where you put your eye, the ayin. Oneg and nega is an affliction. Oneg is something beautiful. The ayin is where you, depends. If you put the ayin at the beginning, it's oneg. If you put the ayin at the end, the letter ayin at the end, it's nega, it's an affliction. Which means many times it's on the eye of the beholder. Many times it's all in the ayin, in the place of how we put our perspectives in life. Our perspectives in life in the Shabbat is not only just to have good food. Yeah, you want to give, it's also for that, 100%. That's not the ikar. That's not the main focus. The main focus is supposed to be that we have to grow spiritually. That's what we're supposed to do, and that's what the Ramban, in essence, was coming to teach us. Now the question that we're going to ask is, what was Moshe Rabbeinu trying to do here? How in the world does it help to give them the day of the Shabbat to connect to Hashem? Shabbat is one day. But when you put it into perspective, how many other days are against it? 6. Imagine right now I'm going to tell you, listen, guys, you know what? I've got the best diet. You know what the diet is? You fast for one day or you watch yourself for one day, but the other 6 days of the week, I'll attack. Just go at it. Right? How many of you are going to lose weight? Or you're going to fire me as a dietitian? Does it make sense? What does that mean? Does it make sense? It's a 1-to-6 ratio. Why in the world would, just because I'm going to give you the Shabbat now, is it going to make such a difference? And come Chachamim, and they say something incredible. And they say that even though on a theoretical level, on a level of mathematics, you're right, it's a ratio of 1-to-6, and therefore the Shabbat cannot have an influence on the human being because you have such another enormous amount of the other days. He says we actually did find that it did help us, because that's what helped us get out of Mitzrayim. So therefore it comes out that that was the koach of the Shabbat, that it has a special segula, that even though it's only 1, in comparison to all the other 6, it makes an incredible impact on the human being that will actually change them, even for that one day. And you see it sometimes. Sometimes you think to yourself, how does Kippur help? Kippur is 1 day, right? You sinned for another, not you guys are tzaddikim, but people, we sin. So we sinned for 353 days, whatever it is, right? And then one day we become tzaddikim gemurim. Yeah, all of a sudden the biggest tzaddiks in the world, and all of a sudden that's it. Well, you think it's going to have an effect? But you do see. Sometimes you see people that just because of a 1 Kippur, they completely change their entire lives. But it was a 1 day. But that's the koach. That's the strength that you have behind it. Because the spirituality, sometimes it has such a strength that it's just a knockout. It just blows you away. And no matter how much you're throwing against it, doesn't matter. All you need is the day of the Shabbat. You don't need anything else. But you have to make sure that you actually appreciate it. The Meshech Chochmah explains also another thing. There's a Meshech Chochmah in Parashat Vayakhel. He says that we actually explained beforehand the differences between Parashat Yitro and Vayakhel and the 10 Commandments. Now we have to understand, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu specifically come and say Maaseh Bereshit, which means that we do Shabbat for the creation of the world in Yitro, and in Vayakhel because of Mitzrayim. So he says, when Bnei Yisrael were in the desert, right, they didn't need, right, the reasoning. They only needed the reasoning of Maaseh Bereshit. Because in the desert, the Parnassah was already there for them, right? They had everything. They had the man coming down from the Shamayim, right? They had the Be'er of Miriam, right? They didn't have fields. They didn't need it. Their clothing grew with them. What else do they need? So therefore, the entire concept of the Shabbat is that to show them that it's something new. But after 40 years, when they want to come into Eretz Yisrael, and now they're going to have fields, and now they're going to have to work. Now in Parashat Vayakhel, they have the second reason. Why? Because of understanding what happened in Mitzrayim. And that's explanation in the Gemara, when the Gemara in Shabbat, Kuf Yudchet Amud Bet says that if Bnei Yisrael would keep 2 Shabbatot, right, we would be freed, we would be redeemed. I know the song says just keep 1 Shabbos and we'll be free, right? But really here it says, he says Shte Shabbatot, has to be 2 Shabbatot. So then, which means if we would have actually keep the 2 concepts, right, of one of them is Melacha, and one of them is Anagav Kiddusha. Meaning it's not actually talking about 2 separate Shabbatot. It is one Shabbat, but there are two concepts in the Shabbat. Number one, that I'm not working, and number two, that I'm actually I'm inserting kedusha in it. There's two aspects in the Shabbat, right? The shamor just means don't work. Okay, so I'm not going to work, but I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to sit in bed, put my legs up, and I'm going to enjoy myself like this. The suntan, yeah, hot sun in the Miami. What happens is no, we have to also insert the kedusha inside. So there's two aspects of the Shabbat, and on this, right, when it says in the Shefa of the Shabbat, the Gemara in Shabbat of Yudah Mubet says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes and he tells Moshe Rabbeinu, Matana Tova, I have an incredible present to give to Am Yisrael, right? But you have to show it to them. Why? So that way they know the value of it. So he says, right, because if not, then what happens is that they don't understand what it is. So Kam Chachamim, and they say that's why we have to actually be happy, and we have to actually show that was the Matana Tova that we have, that we are precious, we are happy that we have the day of the Shabbat. What happened once, it once happened, there was a story with a rabbi that he gave, right, to his wife a ring, and he gave it to a poor person, and he started running after him. What happened is that a poor person came to the rabbi's house and he wanted money. The rabbi had no money. He didn't have anything, but he wanted to give tzedakah. So he went and he took his wife's ring. She must have taken it off to need challah or whatever it was. And he went and he gave the poor person his wife's ring. When she comes, she's looking for rings, right? She comes and she said, "Where's my rings?" "No, I just gave it to the poor person that knocked on the door." She says, "Are you crazy? You know how much that was worth?" So he said, "What? It was worth a lot?" She said, "Yeah, for sure." He says, "1 minute." He went running. Running. He finally catches the guy. He stops him. What does he tell him? No, what does he tell him? What do you think he told him? You know what he told him? He said, "By the way, you should know, I gave you something very, very precious. Make sure that when you redeem it, you get a lot of money for it." That's what he told him. We thought he was going to start telling him, give it back to me. He said, no. I'm giving you something precious. The reason why is because sometimes if you don't know how precious it is, you could take it and you don't understand what it is. How many times does it happen that people come and they don't realize what's going on, and they come and they take important documents or important things and they use it as scrap paper, or they use it for doodling or for this or for that, and then you're like going crazy. You know what you just did? Do you know that paper that you just had? Imagine right now you had a winning lottery ticket and you come and your child is there scribbling all over it. They can't see any more of the numbers. They can't even scan it anymore with the scanner because it doesn't scan, right? He scribbled all over the place. That's what it is. The day of the Shabbat is the exact same thing. And therefore, right, a person just has to understand that imagine right now, right, they bring a beautiful mashal. They said, imagine a person was coming and there was going to be a big show. So he's working and working and working, very, very difficult, very hard, right? In order for him to come and to get a good seat in the show. He gets the best seats in the house, costs him a fortune. He worked for like a month, night, day, everything that you want in order to do it. He gets there, right? He comes, they have very cozy seats. Well, you paid a big bucks, for sure. They better be cozy. So he lies down, and all of a sudden he comes and he says, "You know what? The show is nice." After a few minutes, he comes and he says, "They already did this part. Okay, fine, but just 1 second." And then falls asleep. The entire show, he was sleeping. When he wakes up, what are you going to tell the guy? What are you going to tell the guy? You're going to tell him, "Fool, you went and you saved up so much money for what? To come and to sleep on a good chair? You could have paid half the amount or your third or fourth, get a good hotel room with a nice bed, and you go to sleep. Well, you're spending such a fortune just to watch a show and you're not even watching it. What's going on?" The exact same Kam Chachamim, and they say that happens with the Shabbat. Because every single time we have Shabbat, but we don't recognize the beauty of the Shabbat. We don't see how beautiful it is, how precious it is. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, "I have a matana tova, I have the best present to give you." Make sure you tell them about the day of the Shabbat. Because if not, they're not going to appreciate it. So make sure you tell them, look how beautiful the Shabbat is. So they understand what is the day of the Shabbat. Kal Chachamim, they say, so the Shabbat is like a tachana delek. It's like a gas station. That it's in the middle, that when a person comes and he realizes that he needs gas, he has to actually come and fill it up. So even though the entire week you're coming and you're driving and you're driving and you're trying to, but at the end of the day, you need to fill up the gas. And the gas is filled up on Shabbat. Shabbat is when we come and we start putting in that gas, right? And it's not the lower, it's the highest level of the gas, up to 93, whatever, it's up there. And why? That's in order to inject us. And that injection is even better than a vaccination of a virus, right? Whatever ones that you were talking about before, Pfizer, this, that, I don't know what, Johnson. You mentioned another one there. It wasn't Moderna. I don't remember what it was called, something over there. Yeah? But basically what happens though is that that's the best injection. Because this injection is going to give us a strength to go until the next Shabbat. And that holiness is supposed to last us until the next Shabbat. And it continues going. Because that in essence is what the day of the Shabbat is actually supposed to do. So a person has to actually understand that a person that does an Avirah on Shabbat, it's actually even worse than if you would have done it during the week. Meaning, if you already want to do an Avirah, don't do it on Shabbat. Do it during the week. And the same thing with a mitzvah. If you're already going to do a mitzvah, do it during the week. Right? Do it on Shabbat. It's actually brought down. And just like the Saba Mikelem used to come and he used to say, on every single thing that you would do on Shabbat, it's Keneged Kol HaTorah Kula, just like Shabbat is Keneged Kol HaTorah. Right? And that's why I told you already about the Ben Ish Chai, that he said about that the importance of the Shabbat, whatever you learn on the Shabbat is going to be 100 times more. So we don't understand what it is on the value of the Shabbat. If I remember correctly, they actually bring down a beautiful mashal to do with a person that he went and he was very, very poor. So he was sent by his family in order to make some money. So he went to a far off place. And what happened was when he got there were a lot of jewels. And they were all over the place. So he asked him, what is this? He said, oh, these are jewels. They were thrown on the floor. So they came and they made buttons out of the jewels. They made everything out of the jewels. Everything was made out of the jewels. And he was working and working. He worked for a good 2 years, 3 years. Finally, he makes some money and he's going to go home. So, okay, fine. He wants to go home. So what happens is he starts walking towards, his house. And in the middle of the way, he needed some money. He needed to buy things. And he just didn't have money, right? Whatever he had was just some jewels. He went and he said, listen, I'm going to sell you these jewels. They gave him peanuts for it. But he was able to eat and drink on the way home. He gets home. And all of a sudden, right, what happens is that the wife and how much money did he really bring? He didn't, okay, they thought he was going to go. He was going to bring something, to support the family for another. It wasn't enough. They weren't happy. And then all of a sudden the wife comes and she opens up the money pouch and she finds little tiny jewels. She says, I don't understand. What are these? That little jewel. It was nothing. She goes, are you crazy? You know what the value? So what are you talking about the value? They were thrown all over the floor over there. They were all over the place. They were on the ground. They were there. They were everywhere. There were jewels. He says, you don't understand. This is the more money than everything that you got for us. She went and she actually sold those little jewels. There was much more value than everything that he brought home. And then he started crying. They went. He tried to take off even of the buttons, everything he tried finding. And why was he crying? Because he realized that he had so many of those jewels. He could have been the richest guy in the world. But he didn't know how to appreciate what it was a diamond. What's a diamond? And what's just a piece of glass that looks like a diamond? He doesn't know how to appreciate it. So therefore for him, he lost everything. The same way Chachamim come and they say, we don't understand what it is, the beauty of the Shabbat. The Shabbat is so beautiful, he says, even when we're going to come on Erev Shabbat and we're going to start polishing our shoes, he says the reward will be so great that we'll be crying after 120 years saying, but all these mitzvot, everything that we had was thrown on the floor. It was like there was nothing. But Chaval, we had all that. And we just didn't pay attention. The message of Shabbat is clear. Recognize what it is, the Shabbat. Appreciate the Shabbat. And let's make sure that we actually inject ourselves with every single Shabbat with holiness in order that that holiness, Bezrat Hashem, will keep us going from one week until another week, Bezrat Hashem. Shabbat Shalom.